I'm Felina Jean, and this is Black Broads Abroad. I'm an international woman of leisure who said peace out to the United States in 2011, and I have not looked back, accepted this ass, honey. Since then, I've lived on 4 continents with travel to over 40 countries. Along my journey, I've come to know some very compelling Black women from all over the world who also said fuck you to their comfort zones. I created this podcast to inspire Black women in the diaspora to take risks and live their very best lives. I don't think people realize how much easier life can be outside of the United States. I mean, really, just barred my little temporary visa situation right now, like, life is just so much easier. I went to go register my business this week, and it was $14 to register my business. I pay $5 for really, really, really good meals. My weed is like $3. It costs $10 to clean my house. Telling y'all, life is better on the other side of that rat race for those that want to venture. And it's just good to be around Black people, doing business with Black people, not even having the stress that comes with being Black in America. But that, of course, does not mean you don't get tried out here. People try you all over the world. You gotta be woke out here bartering as an American, because people will hear your accent and the prices will instantly and astronomically increase. So boom, let me tell you what happened. I had to hire a driver for the day, and I negotiated a price beforehand, and we agreed on the terms. Homegirl pulls up and she was like sizing me up. So I peeped game and I was like, okay, let me give her a rope to hang herself with and see how far she gonna go. So she's asking me all these pertinent questions about what I do and so forth and so on. And then boom, she was like, I think I'm gonna go up on a price. Like, girl, the won't for 500, Alex. Matter of fact, how you say your tip in Cosa? But I didn't say that. I politely implored her to overstand. You can't change the rules of engagement in the middle of a contract. The point of the matter is, it's 2 different prices in these streets. The Western and American prices and the going rate. Stay woke. Other than that minor hiccup, this week was really good. I did a tarot reading on one of my favorite Jamaicans. Shout out to Kimberly Megan, fellow Black broad abroad. But let me tell y'all about my tribe. This chick accidentally butt-dialed me from her empty 5th grade classroom, blasting Trina, I'm the baddest bitch, in the background. All I hear is, little nasty hoe, red bone but a classy hoe. And I'm like, you know what? And this is a professional Black girl at her finest. And you know she's a Jamaican from Miami with 50-11 jobs, as all Jamaicans have. Medical biller, art teacher, writer, tutor, grad student, mom. She might possibly be able to do your taxes before April 15th. Yo, follow Kimberly Megan on Instagram for a riot. So I'm actually really excited about this week's interview with Ashlea Pope, Black Broad Abroad, extraordinaire, honey. She is the founder of Saint and Center, a CBD company that has a social impact strategy and advocates for inclusion in the cannabis space. So stick around for that interview. But first, the Chinese city of Wuhan has been ravaged by the deadly coronavirus. Authorities have reported 15 new deaths in Wuhan, and the State Department has mandated that all U.S. workers at the U.S. consulate evacuate immediately. More than 400 new cases of the virus were diagnosed, bringing the total number impacted to 1,300. Travel restrictions in Wuhan and 12 other cities have been affected. I hope we're not on the precipice of another bubonic plague, child. Y'all stay safe out there in China. In these studs ain't loyal news, Lena Waithe and her wife, Alana Mayo, have split after just 2 months of announcing their marriage. Citing in a press release, after careful thought and consideration, we have decided to part ways. The rep goes on to say, we have nothing but support for one another and ask that you respect our privacy during this time. Not There was always something like a bit fishy and disingenuous to me about that Lena. She got them cheating, squinty eyes. Y'all straight girls stay woke out there with these studs. Anyway, it's been reported that she's been carrying on an affair with the Nigerian chick that played Harriet Tubman, who was popping big shit about African American women all on her Twitter feed and is yet again taking another African American woman's part. Yeah, her. You know what, Alana? They deserve each other. Lena was out here tricking on Gucci and Chanel bags and buying IG Thoughts Rihanna Savage lingerie. Girl, bye. Studs be a whole 4 as a femme and an 8.5 after they cut their locks off and don't know how to act. Somebody on Twitter said Lena Waithe got that community strap, and that just seems to be the empirical facts of the matter. I wish for Alana total healing and restoration and some premium pipe from a real penis in her near future. Alana, holla at me if you want to get this root work popping. I jest. Not really. The families of Botham Jean, Antoine Rose, and DJ Henry have joined forces with Roc Nation and the NFL for the Responsibility Program. The initiative is aimed at driving awareness to police brutality. Botham Jean was shot in the heart in his own home by police officer Amber Geiger while eating ice cream and watching football in his home. Antoine Rose was a 17-year-old African-American young man who was fatally shot in East Pittsburgh. He was unarmed when he was shot. And DJ Henry, a Pace University football player, was shot dead in Pleasantville, New York by an off-duty police officer. These stories are becoming like all too familiar. We are never going to persuade the hearts and minds of caucasoids, ever. We've always been murdered and assaulted in plain sight, from the plantations when we got off the boat, to families coming to picnics to watch black men and black women be lynched. Y'all gotta understand, some behavior is just innate. It's in their DNA. Personally, I believe the video campaign is an exercise in futility. We've been begging it for 400 years to see our humanity. It's not gonna happen. But, you know, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I'm of the belief that the only place for black people to be free is in Africa. But the important thing is that the video is bringing solace to the family. And that's it for...
Let me tell y'all motherfuckers what happened last week.
Until next time. Ashlea Pope's travel story does not begin with travel at all. Her story starts with an innate, inexplicable obsession for the so-called other. The first time she recalls being fascinated was in 1990, when she was 5 years old and an Afghani immigrant girl had just walked into her kindergarten classroom in a long red sari and headdress. Ashlea was stunned and overtaken by curiosity. They later become best friends for the next 5 years. Her rabid fascination with children of other cultures would continue throughout elementary school. She deliberately added more immigrant children to her circle of friends. Ashlea would hang out in after-school English second language classes just to get to know kids who she learned later on in life came as refugees escaping atrocities she could not yet imagine. At this tender age, Ashlea was too young to feel pity, but rather complete fascination with their customs, language, and culture. In high school, Ashlea was the founder of the Spanish Club and the president of the Alliance for Students for Cultural Awareness. At 15, her mom, a New Age liberal, allowed her to go on a study abroad program that she found on the internet. It would be her first trip abroad. Now, 35 countries and 18 years later, she hasn't stopped exploring. At this juncture, current events shape the way that Ashlea travels. Human rights, technology, indigenous culture, natural phenomena, and the arts influence the majority of her travel. She finds it way more interesting to go places where cultural shifts are happening, policy is being shaped, where people are gathering to proclaim their rights, where there is a cultural return to roots and the arts are exploding, where ideas are turned into companies and once-in-a-lifetime natural phenomena occur. Welcome, Ashlea.
Thank you, Felina. I am incredibly happy, excited, a little nervous to talk about myself, but yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Don't feel nervous. You are so interesting. So I have to give like just a bit of backstory about how I even became familiar with you. So are you like OG Tribe? Like back in 2011, Avita Robinson started Nomadness Travel Tribe, which has like since grown into this massive travel movement. But Ashlea is an OG. And I remember just being so entranced by like what you were doing and all of your travels. I wasn't fascinated by that many people, child, but you were the one, like one of the ones that really stuck out. So I'm really excited to do this interview with you. So.
Yeah, shout out to Anita. Like, she's one of my longtime friends, one of my muses, one of my inspirations. Like, recently we got a chance to go to Tulum. I think it was in September, and I just got to be like with her one-on-one. But like the people that I met, yeah, like just to have a Vita all to myself, that was amazing. But yeah, Nomadness was just, it's one of those things like where you just did not feel lonely anymore as a Black traveler. Like she created this thing where I found my tribe, because literally is a tribe. Like you found Black people who love to travel, and all of a sudden I wasn't this weird kid hanging out with like, immigrants from other countries. And yeah, it just wasn't, I didn't feel.
And it was like, I mean, I really think she's responsible for spawning this Black travel movement, because I think I was added to the group like October 2011. There were like maybe like 50 people in the group at that time. And to see like where it's grown, it's absolutely amazing. But I have a whole host of questions for you. And I'm going to start with, in your social media profile, you described yourself as a polyglot. Most people don't know what the fuck that is. So how many languages do you actually speak, Ms. Pope?
So I'll tell you what the fuck that is. It is a person who speaks multiple languages. Started with Spanish when I was younger. Then I studied German in college. So those are the two that I'm working on now. Lived in Thailand for a little while, never picked up Thai. But I have to say, like, I remember the moment. I was probably about 5 years old. I was in Florida, and I was at the pool, and I remember these two guys, and I probably can assume now they were Cuban, and they were speaking to each other, and I thought it was just the coolest thing. I just really was. I will never forget that moment where I understood the concept that people can use different words and communicate differently, and I could not understand it. And so after that moment, my dad bought me a Spanish dictionary, and I remember him handing it to me. It's like a little small red Spanish dictionary. And I didn't use it to really like communicate with people. Like my sister and I would just learn the bad words, and we would like just say shit and toilet and things that my mom would let us say in Spanish.
At 5?
So like that was at 5.
I love that.
That's how it started. It really did. And yeah, like, I would have these birthday parties when I was younger, and I didn't even really quite understand it then, but like a lot of the parents couldn't speak to each other. They came over as Cambodian refugees from Vietnam, and they would come and they would bring their kids, and my mom could never communicate with them. But I obviously I communicate with the kids. So I had these birthday parties where the parents never really interacted, but the kids, we would just play, I just was always fascinated by the other ever since I could remember.
So where did you grow up? And what was your first exposure to international travel?
Okay, so I grew up in North Carolina, and then my parents separated, and I ended up going to Atlanta at about the age of 14. A year later, I didn't grow up rich, so like this is definitely not a story of privilege. But I couldn't afford to do a year-long program, some of the programs that were offered to high school students that I had found online. So these programs catered more to high school students, like, you knew where the kids were, you had a set school. I just found a language school in Puerto Rico where you could take classes. It was very simple. And I told my mom, I was like, I want to go here and I want to study here for the summer, and I want to learn Spanish. And I always was very willful. I was always very in school, but I was in school. I always did really well in school. But I think my mom knew that she couldn't say no. So she just let me go. That's pretty much it. She let me go. I went there. I had a great time. I was 15, drinking, doing all the fun stuff.
Oh, partying. Now you were drinking in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico did it, like it was Puerto Rico, so it really didn't matter. If you could order it, you could buy it. I was like at clubs, I was just turning up. And so, I say this to say, like, my first trip anywhere was solo. So I have no problem going somewhere and being the new girl, whether that's a classroom or a country.
That's interesting. And solo travel was actually my favorite. So there's so many ways to sustain yourself as a traveler. Can you talk about some of the ways that you've been able to fund your travel over the years?
Okay, this is a good one. I've always come up with a scheme. I'm just like one of those people when I want something, that's just, I will have it. So one of the ways I did it was bartending. I knew I could make a lot of money. I knew that like, you could always come back to the job if you wanted to. And that, it doesn't take a lot to live in other places. So you could save up a couple $1,000s and be in Guatemala 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
The second way I did it, when I went to Thailand, I always like to notice cultural shifts. And this was right when Airbnb was getting started. And I knew people were going to Thailand and loving it. And this was around 2014. And I realized that, that people would rent from a foreigner, or from a person who spoke English, like people coming in from the States. I could charge them a crazy price for my apartment. So I got a really nice apartment. And I could live off the profit that I made from Airbnb. And so I lived in Asia a year doing Airbnb for my really nice apartment. I think it was like $400 or $500 a month. And like I was charging like $1,000.
Oh, yes. You were a very early adapter of Airbnb.
Yeah, I was like, I saw the opportunity. The same thing I did in Atlanta. I realized like, when I was living in Atlanta, I realized the old Fourth Ward was becoming like the place to be. And I was still only paying $800 in rent. And then I realized I could Airbnb my apartment and go live in another country. So I took advantage of that for as long as I could. Yeah, I'm pretty crafty.
What countries have you actually lived in?
So I've lived in Thailand. I've spent a long time in Guatemala and Cambodia. I've lived in Germany because I studied there. I'm currently in Mexico. I lived in Nicaragua. They just had a revolution last year, so that's how I kind of wound up in Mexico. But I had planned to spend the next few years in Nicaragua, actually. But it's funny how things lead you somewhere. Yeah.
That same kind of thing happened in Qatar when I was there. It was a huge geopolitical crisis, and it was like, okay, girl, what you about to do?
Yeah, but my boyfriend had to pry me away because I was like, I'm staying with the people, and we have to stand up and protest and revolution. We had gotten a house on a lake. We had bought this FJ truck, and we were settled. We were living $1,200. We had 2 houses. On a lake, really nice property, fully furnished, kayaks, a beautiful safari truck, my whole dream. And I was like, I'm not about to let my dream die for a revolution. And it's so silly to say it. It really is. And so he was like, no, we're leaving. And so we went to Mexico City. And honestly, I really thought that, I just thought I knew what Mexico was. I thought it would be like margaritas and sombreros. And I was like, whatever, everybody goes to Mexico City or Mexico. I got to Mexico City and I think I was just undone at first. I just could not believe that this was 2.5 hours away, 3 hours away from Atlanta and the plane. And, 34 countries later, nobody had told me how wonderful this place was.
Wow.
It's like living in New York. Yeah, it's incredible. It's bursting with creativity, art, beauty, food, and you're getting it's cosmopolitan. It's a world city, and yeah, it's affordable.
I interviewed Claire of Up in the Air Life. I'm sure you know Claire, and she's also living in Mexico. Yeah. And it's never been on my radar. I'm from California, so obviously, we go our TJ runs and shit on the weekend, but it never occurred to me as a place to visit or even live. But you guys are shifting my whole my bias about that. Yeah.
I had a severe bias against coming here. I mean, I was kicking and screaming when I left Nicaragua. You could not have dragged me out of Central America. I just loved Nicaragua and Guatemala. But Mexico is deep, man. It's old, it's deep. The culture is profound. It's more than, tequila and margaritas and beaches. There's this wisdom here that only comes when a country is old. When you think about India, the Africas, and the original places, right? And these original cultures. America's a new place. We're just kind of learning to walk, right? When you go to somewhere it's very true. I have this really great friend from India, and he always kind of talks about, the comparison between the West and India. He was like, you guys are just still learning. He kind of treats us like it's a really beautiful way to put it, because that's exactly what it is. We're kind of we still are obsessed with things, and when you go to other places, people really have this emphasis on family and age. We're so busy, trying to look younger and hold on to our youth. And there's a lot of these ancient and indigenous cultures, age is such has such value, like, because there's things that you can only learn through experience, right?
Well,
And Mexico's one.
age is something. I mean, I want to grow old, but with some Phyllis child. So maybe that's just.
But I'm not even like you can get your retin-A here. I have it on, like I'm just aging backwards. Yeah, I feel you. Like I'm still very, very gringa. I'm still very
So you mentioned that your parents are both like new age liberals that encourage your exploration at a very early age. How have your views on spirituality and religion expanded as a result of your upbringing and your travel?
I think, my mom was always an experimenter. Like, 1 week we were with the Nation of Islam. The next week, we were like reading some Hindu scriptures for bedtime stories. My mom, whatever like floated her boat that week was just, that's what we were. And she just always encouraged an open mind. Like I look at it and I think, it's normal. But when I hear like somebody's like parents are making their kids believe this or making their kids believe that, to me, it is borderline abusive. I was always just seriously, straight up, I look at somebody and they're like, I had to do this on Sunday. And I'm like, whoa, like, but I've grown and I've learned, I think, that people, they do the best they can and everybody wants the best for their children. And so I've become more compassionate around religion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, growing up, my mom, we were just taught to explore, like, and maybe almost to a fault, I kind of grew up without attachments. So I just, whatever I'm enthusiastic today might not be what I'm passionate about tomorrow. You just never know. And I kind of like being able to just change my mind. I can change my mind really easily without guilt.
Are you a Pisces or a Sagittarius by any chance?
Listen, I'm Sagittarius. My mom is Pisces.
Oh my gosh. I fucking knew it.
Yeah, I'm super sad.
That's like Bruja telepathy right there, yo.
Straight up, I was raised by a Pisces mom, and then Sagittarius, I just did whatever I wanted to do.
How have you experienced spirituality in a different context in your travels?
People always ask me, what's my favorite place in the world? And I have to say, like, my favorite trip was Ayahuasca. I did
me too.
That was the best trip I've ever taken. And I actually did it with my parents. And my parents,
we have to qualify what ayahuasca is because everyone doesn't know. So ayahuasca is a DMT so-called drug, but it's like a plant and a vine combined that could be found. It's found in the Amazon rainforest, and it's like brewed into a tea. And you have this very transcendental experience. Usually you do it with a shaman, but there's different contexts. But continue. I just wanted people to know what ayahuasca is.
I definitely did it with a shaman, and I would never recommend not doing it with a shaman. There's nothing recreational about ayahuasca. It is 9 hours.
That's true.
Nothing.
But it's 9 hours or more. But I mean, you really understand that time is really an illusion because it's like also 1,000 years and 1,000,000 years at the same time as being 9 hours.
I could have woken up 95 years old and I would have never known. That's like time. Time is absolutely an illusion.
So you did it with your parents.
I did it with my parents. The first 2 times I did it, and I actually couldn't purge because I think I'm just obviously like life is not perfect. I had some blocks, and I just couldn't. It was very pretty and it was nice and it was very loving experience. But afterwards, I was like, if this is so beautiful and this is such a wonderful experience, why would I not share this with my parents? Why would I, somehow think it's taboo or not invite my parents or keep it from them? So I just told my mom, who was absolutely ready. She was like bags packed, and she actually has done it more times than me now. So she does it like just all the time.
Where were you guys?
We were actually in the mountains of Georgia. So there was a Peruvian shaman who came up from Peru. So he conducts them in Georgia. And so I actually did it there. And honestly, as much as I had this fantasy about doing it in Peru or Colombia, I guess like at the time, ayahuasca finds you, you know,
It does.
and it was my time.
It
It
does.
finds you.
It finds you.
Yeah.
You know, I was first introduced to the idea of ayahuasca when I was living in Brazil in 2011, and it wasn't my time. And like fast forward, like 2016, I was going through some shit, and I was angry. I was an angry bitch. Whew, I can own that shit now. I was an angry bitch, and it started calling me. I did it. Yeah,
That's how it found me.
That's how it found me. I did it in Den Haag in the Netherlands the first time at a church,
Wow.
Church of Santo Daime. So I didn't do it in like a traditional context, like, you know, in Brazil or Peru or something. But continue with your story. So ayahuasca found you.
It found me, and then at this time, you know, I like my parents weren't even really speaking. So, and it was always this, and I never thought they would speak, and I was fine with that. I thought they just like they needed to be separate people. And so I didn't do it because necessarily that I wanted them to have some sort of revelation, but it was also when they did it, I was actually able to purge for the first time. I needed to have them there. That was the healing that I needed. They had to be there. And so they did it. And to this day, now they talk, they're friends. Like you wouldn't have, if you had told me this, you know, 10 years ago that my parents would be calling each other.
Wow.
I would you know what I mean? Like it was healing. It was healing for our family. And so when people use this, like they throw around this term drug, it's usually people say drugs and it's like they literally just don't know what they're talking about.
It's
right?
not a drug. It's literally like a plant and a vine. They call it the God. What do they call it? The God molecule. I met God. I mean, I've always had a, you know, a relationship with God, but I met God. And God is everything is what I learned. I mean, I met my ancestors who I was in another life. I met my children that have departed. I died. I came back to life. It was crazy. I'm molecularly not the same human being as a result. Not.
Absolutely. Like, I absolutely agree. Like, you know, and that's just what I was saying. It's not a drug. Drugs are fun. You go out, you know, you turn up. Ayahuasca is the truth. And I think a lot of us, like, it, you know, when you see, like, when you experience God in this way, it's not like you come down and like you're this holy person. I think a lot of after it, I was PTSD about it because now you know. And it's
now
what do you do now?
Yeah.
Now you know, and what do you do? And what do you do with that knowledge that you just obtained? And so that's you know, hard too, to like reach those certain levels, know that it's there, know that these parallels exist, and then to have to sort of come back to this reality and reconcile those two things.
Yeah, and you know, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I felt like my God just pointed out my faults in just the most loving way. Like, this is who you've hurt, you know. And I mean, I saw those people and I saw the despair and like, you know, just some of the shit that I caused in people's life because I hadn't dealt with my own shit. But like you said, like coming out of it, it's like then you deal with your shit.
Right. Now you have to deal with it.
Now you deal with it. I made a lot of apologies.
Right. Like definitely, yeah. Like it's definitely work to be done afterwards. And I guess, you know, it's kind of like it gives you your homework assignment, you know, like this is what you need to be working on.
So the third time you did it, what happened the third time?
Well, the third time was actually with my parents. The first two times it was loving and it was, you know, bright. And I you know, I've seen people who have had some terrifying experiences, and I'll say that it was terrifying in like the greatest sense of the term, right? So it was everything. It was good, it was bad, it was beautiful, and it was, you know, it was just all of those things that you come in at once. But yeah, so I did that 3 times, and I'm pretty sure I'm due for another one. But
I've done it twice. Like, I'm not really compelled to. I would do it again, but I'm not compelled to do it. I mean, I could do it every few years or so. The second time for me was not as intense, but I always meet my ancestors when I'm like under these influences. So you actually advocate for the use of psychedelics, and you have been cited in saying it doesn't change you, it reveals you. And one of your funny travel stories include being on LSD at the Vatican. Was you clear to expound why you was on dope where the Pope live at? I know you're not supposed to use a preposition at the end of a sentence, but yes.
I did it because I thought it would be cool, and I was with my best friend, and like we were just, let's make this as interesting as possible. I have to say, like I didn't feel. It was nice to like kind of get the visuals and like to do the L in the place, but I don't feel a particular connection to the Catholic Church, and so no disrespect to people.
Yeah, no.
Get the pet feeling out of my mind, like I just like it. It was beautiful in the sense that the art was beautiful, but I don't have this reverence for Catholicism that made the experience particularly profound. It was just something we wanted to do. We recorded part of it. And
that's a story you have to tell your grandchildren. Like that one time I was on LSD at the Vatican. It's like that should be the first line of your memoir.
Right? Like I did it there. And I always say that too. Like I'm making stories for the grandkids. Like, what are you gonna tell like the next generation? Like what's your legacy gonna look like? And I think mine will be just one of wonder and adventure, and that's my goal. That's absolutely my goal. I always say, like, when people write their obituaries, like where your obituary gets written, right? People, they don't talk, you don't mention like, your Airbnb, how nice it was when you were in Cancun. You talk about the place and how it's changed you and the things you I have this very sensitivity to where I am. So, leaving the United States for me was never, people, you talk a lot about you're leaving your comfort zone. I never found anything comfortable about like working 2 jobs and like paying high ass rent.
Oh my God. I know, right?
That's like, I don't get what people are holding on to. Like I literally don't. And but I have to always have compassion because people are like, they kind of grow up with this notion of afraid of the other. And I literally started at 15 years old, traveling solo. So I don't have this idealized version of the United States. I don't think that it's the best country in the world, and I never have. So I've never had to fight those. I never had to fight that fear. I have a fear of being in the United States forever. Like that's when like depression. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a whole other episode because I've tried re-entry twice in the past 9 years, and it is not good for my mental health. I mean, I have panic attacks, real life panic attacks upon arrival.
Right.
Yeah, anyway, that's a whole other episode. So
definitely.
Okay, we're both stoners. I think that's understood.
I think I smoke. I don't really. My boyfriend would never say that I'm a stoner because I don't know enough about like he's a connoisseur. He knows all about the plant and he smokes good shit. I was like smoking mids when he met me, so like it's fine. You know what I mean? And I like to smoke. I do. I enjoy smoking. I probably am more of a psychonaut. That's what you call them. I'm more like I enjoy.
Okay.
But like, don't get me wrong. Like I've been smoking, for a long, long time. Just put it that way. I will smoke. I have no problem smoking.
Okay, so I'm a stoner. I'll own that. So, but my question is like, which countries have you had like? Even if it's not weed, like which countries have you had like the best? I don't like to say drugs, but the best shit.
The best stuff. This is gonna sound weird, but like the U.S., we have like some of the best weed. Maybe like Holland.
Yeah, I'm from LA. Nobody has better weed than LA. That's like hands down. Yeah,
everywhere else. Yeah. Although I do get like good stuff in Mexico. Like it's in Mexico, one of the great things about it is like it's so professional. Like they send you a menu, the delivery service. Like, outside of never being on time, it's really like it's very professionally kind of done. But people are nice. I'm used to arguing with drug dealers, like having to relay stuff. No, here it's like very I don't know. It's like you just order it. And some people even have like applications where you can order it. Like,
speaking of medicinal marijuana, you are an evangelist of CBD products now, to the extent that you recently launched a new CBD business called Saint and Center. I really love that name, by the way. What was the impetus behind your newest venture?
So it started because everything always kind of starts because of the people who are around you and influence you. And my boyfriend is he smokes and he loves the plant. He loves the plant. And so he wanted to start the CBD company. And sort of where I came in, I obviously wanted to help him. I love entrepreneurship and I love supporting entrepreneurs. And so I decided to help him. I came in wanting to work on the social impact strategy. I think that people should have the right to put whatever they want to put in their bodies, as long as they're not flying a plane or driving a bus. I think it's a constitutional right. You should be able to smoke what you want. But it sucks that what you have now is a cannabis industry, like particularly CBD, a lot of these companies that are geared toward, white women and yoga, and nobody says anything about the people sitting in jail for marijuana, and it extends so deep, cannabis laws and the inequities. When you have a conviction, like you can't access housing if you're in any kind of housing program, or an apartment. You have a criminal conviction on your record. You're not eligible to receive any kind of social safety nets, and so that means not only that you can't sort of provide for your family because getting a job is difficult, but your kids suffer, and so it's a problem when you can, you have cannabis being traded in stocks, like it's, $1 million industry. And then you have people sitting in jail. So the thing was that when he started the company, I was like, I don't want to help you do this unless you have an impact strategy, unless we are really sort of a plan to address through our company, the inequities and the laws. And so we started working with a nonprofit in Georgia called Reform Georgia. And FYI, Georgia has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. So hemp is legal federally. And so I wanted to sort of start this company with the aspiration that we would be setting the standard for what cannabis companies and what CBD companies should be doing and talking about, in all their branding and selling, that we can't forget the people who are losing their livelihoods for the same plant that people are making millions of dollars from. So that's where I came in. So I'm sort of part owner. And we do have a farm in Georgia too. So we'll be completely seed to shelf in a few weeks.
So dope. Yes.
Yeah. Completely seed to shelf.
Controlling the means of production.
Capital. Yes, ma'am. That is the name of the game.
I love that. So, okay. One of the other questions that I have for you. Okay, you have this funny story about hanging out with Cambodian deportees, and it brings to mind some of the vast differences that exist between tourists who and there's nothing wrong with it, who like their Mai Tais at the resort and their cruise ships and hop on, hop off buses, versus those who are travelers and prefer a more immersive cultural experience. So I kind of want you to share the story about the deportees, and then if you could share, what do you think the importance is of having immersive experiences when you travel and getting up off the resort, in other words?
Oh God. One of the things I want to say is that we have this culture where we see people on social media and they're on the beach and we're like, I want that life. And a lot of times those same people, I'll meet them and they've never spoken a word of Spanish. They've never left the resort. They did everything for the gram. And there's nothing inherently noble about traveling somewhere. Anybody can do it. A lot of the Western countries, we have the privilege of being able to go anywhere we want for the most part. So, there's something that's missed about traveling. And one of those things is that immersion and the people you meet. One of the things I got to do in Cambodia, we actually went to Cambodia for a while because Bangkok was really intense when we were living there. And so you need to leave Bangkok before you party yourself to death. And we would just hang out in Cambodia. We rented this house there. We met a lot of the people who were deported from California, Modesto. I know the Southeast Asian. Yeah, a lot of those guys that came, and they live in Cambodia, and they came as refugees as children, never got their paperwork together. They committed a crime because a lot of times they were placed in neighborhoods that were undesirable. So they joined gangs and they did gang shit. And they went back. And so they get deported back to this place that they don't know. And Cambodia is, you talk about Thailand is nice. Cambodia is like, it's poor, like it's not, it has a lot more issues in a lot of countries that we usually think about when we're thinking about Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. You have this group of guys in their hood, and they're in the village. A lot of them, struggle with trying to, they're a sort of a pariah in Cambodia, because you had this chance to go to the United States and you fucked up and now you're back. So they're not really accepted in Cambodia in Cambodia itself, and they have no means to survive. Their families are poor, like in the United States, they're still in the hood. So a lot of them wind up committing suicide,
Oh, wow.
They don't want to be there, and they're not there on vacation. There's no grocery store to go to. They have to learn how to do things like, kill a chicken or things they've never thought they had to do. And these are like guys who have been banging for the past 10 years.
Yeah, California has a, prolific gang culture. It's gangsters of every culture, but Cambodian gangsters, just like niggas in California, believe that. I could imagine that's a huge culture shock. Huge culture.
Yeah, it's a huge culture shock. And a lot of times they don't mentally survive. And so, but for me, it was like, a piece of home. I could relate to them. They spoke English, right? We could put on Dre, listen, and we'd be in these villages, with the speakers turned up, just heads bobbing, turned up, drinking beer. And I would do little things like them. Like my boyfriend would do little things like buy them a pizza because they couldn't afford to buy themselves, pizza and things like that, like things that they really missed. And just hanging out with them and just realizing that our presence was so appreciated. And you don't read that in a guidebook, you didn't plan to go there. You didn't that wasn't a tour. That was just being out there and living and talking to people, being observant. And that's really the point of travel. And a lot of that is not captured in a photo. I can't get a picture of you and know who you are no more than I can take a picture of Mexico, a beach, and you know who Mexico is. Right. And so, yeah. And I think social media kind of subverts what travel can be about. I won't say it has to be about immersion, because I'm trying to be more compassionate about that. Everybody ain't built for immersion.
Yeah. I'm trying not to I'm not judging it, you know what I mean? But that's one of the reasons I'm actually doing a podcast, because, I'm low key as fuck.
You too.
Yeah, I'm super low key. I don't really have a huge social media presence. I'm going to have to get better with that, with this podcast. But people always ask oh, why don't you post more pictures? I'm there's tons of influencers that you can go to if you want to see pictures for the gram. It's right. Not my comfort zone. But I have another question, because this show is about encouraging Black women who are maybe thinking about becoming expats. What advice would you give? What advice would you give to any woman out there that might be interested in leaving their home country?
I think to really start thinking about what story you want to be told about you. And if you don't have the story that you want to be told about yourself, if you're not in a place where that inspires you and that kind of encourages you to explore and craft and create your identity, that's important. And a lot of people, they kind of they stay kind of in the same place because that's just what they've seen. But really starting to get in front of your own narrative. The second thing I would say is, life is easier in a lot of places. And it's not because, necessarily you can come to Mexico and get a great job. It's the fact that you have the ability to make dollars. And that is a really important concept for people to understand. Yes. Is that, $1 is 20 pesos.
Exactly.
So, and there's things that you can have here that you can't have in the United States. I don't have to think about cleaning my home, because it's $20 here. And that's actually a lot, that I like to pay a lot.
Yeah, well, mine is 10. It's $10.
See? And that's usually what it is about, right? So there's things that you can take off your plate. I know this one couple, and they're a black couple from New York, and they they're having their baby here, or they had their baby actually, and they can have a nanny. You know, like it's easier to raise your kids. One person can stay home. They can live on one income. Uber is $2 in Mexico City. I don't have to think about like if I can afford to go somewhere, you know, because I can make dollars and I can spend pesos, and so life can be a lot easier. I can create more because my mental energy isn't spent on, you know, the 2 jobs that I hate that I'm working, the 60, 70 hours a week that I'm working. You know, I can go out to eat, and it's just like something doesn't have to suffer because of it. You can travel, you know, around Central America really easily because every other place is just as cheap. We have to get away from this idea that the United States is this end all be all, because that's just the lie that was sold to us. It's just not everything. There's an entire world out here. And if you are struggling and, you know, if you are looking for a new opportunity, there's, you know, you have the entire world. It's just not where you are or your hometown or your state. It's a plane, like it's so easy now. You can just go and just buy the plane ticket online. It's one click buy, you know, and people live here too, just so they live anywhere else. You don't have to think that it takes something special. There's nothing special. I just bought the ticket, you know, simple as that. Airbnb now, you know, you can have a home as soon as you land.
I know, right? Airbnb was like just game changing in so many ways to make money as a traveler. I mean, that's a whole other episode too, how to make money on Airbnb. You did mention that one of the things that seemed to motivate you as a traveler is arts, culture, and technology. And you've seemed to combine these themes when you launched your startup, Nomadic Nation. That was a few years ago too. So can you tell us a bit more about your company and what inspired you to create the platform?
So at first I was kind of doing the same thing that everybody else was doing. And I think it was like 2013 when I started Nomadic Nation, somewhere around that time. And it was just a blog. And it was like, you know, the top 5 restaurants that you can visit in, you know, Battambang, Cambodia. And that was cool for a while. And then kind of everyone started doing it. And then it just, I felt like something was just missed about what traveling was all about. Like, you're not traveling. Like, yeah, you want to eat well, but that's such a small, minute part of traveling is where you eat. Right.
Yeah.
it seems so silly now just to even say it. It's just like where you eat, you know, like there's so much more to, you know, traveling. It's the people you meet. And so I started, I felt like, not that I necessarily wanted to be rooted, but I really wanted to know a place. And I think traveling and living somewhere are 2 different experiences.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's just a 2 different, and to see people move here, especially like a lot of the creatives that are coming from LA and New York coming to Mexico City, because now they have time to work on their craft, and what they're creating in these other places in this different kind of context. And you're able to kind of take this inspiration and create something much more deeper and profound. Not only like what you're learning, you know, just kind of intellectually, but like what you're learning about yourself. So the idea behind Nomadic Nation first started out as a travel blog. And then I just kind of stopped doing it. I didn't know what I wanted it to be. And as I've worked in tech and as I've lived in Mexico City, and I kind of met these creatives, these creative expats who are like making waves in Mexico City, and just shout out one of them, Minle. She's this Black girl who lives in Mexico City, Black woman, Black queen. Who lives in Mexico City. She's a cannabis advocate, one of the hosts for Broccoli Mag. And she had this event that was a human rights event. And I remember just walking in there and thinking like, this is exactly who I am. Like, this is a human rights event. This is an Afro-Latino dinner, art gallery. There's free pre-rolls, so you could smoke while you eat. It was just this great expression of her and where she was living. And it was a who's who of Mexico City, and how she just sort of carved out her identity in this place that was not her home, but that she has made her home. And these are the stories that are most interesting to me now. And so Nomadic Nation was really born out of that idea. And tech being a way to kind of facilitate these changes faster in development and economic development in the places you visit. Everybody wants to be impactful, and tech is one of those ways that we can actually accomplish that now. So Nomadic Nation is a travel and culture streetwear company. And what the goal is that we're working with artists around the world designing drops, so graphic apparel specifically aimed at travelers, expats, creative expats, a clothing line. And each drop features a certain country. So you don't know
Oh,
what's, yeah, each drop features a certain, you don't know what's going to drop, and it's once a month and it comes to your email. So, you know, you have the option to either buy it or you don't. But the idea is that you kind of get this design by this incredible artist, in some incredible place in the world. And you can wear it, you know, and you can wear it and you can talk about it and you can sort of get a deeper narrative on places around the world. And also, we're also working with tech companies, like social impact tech companies, to help them raise money for whatever they're working on in whatever particular place that we're featuring for the month. So it has this sort of social impact component to it. There's this streetwear, fashion, creative component to it. And it's also helping you to kind of discover, you know, other artists in these other countries.
so what is the biggest lesson that you've learned about stepping outside of your comfort zone?
I have to say, like, this idea of wonder, not wander, but wonder, to just always be fascinated by everything that's around you and learning to find fascination. I think learning something you didn't know, experiencing something you didn't know existed that's living, right? And a lot of times we get stuck in our routines. And that happened to me. I was in Atlanta for a few years and I became incredibly depressed because I was just missing that wonder in my life. And eventually I just moved to Nicaragua. I sold everything. It's so funny. I was like hanging on to everything too. I was like, oh, let's put it in storage just in case we come back. And then all this stuff that I kept, I never had like once thought about it. Yeah, travel is a wondrous undertaking. You know, you have the opportunity to learn, to be confronted, to be challenged, and that kind of shapes you. You don't really know who you are until you are confronted. Like, you don't know what you believe until you're with somebody who believes something different. And you don't know what you don't know until you're confronted with what you don't know. So you have to always be kind of seeking those things. And luckily, we have the privilege to do it. Like, you know, having a U.S. passport is nothing short of a privilege. You didn't
Oh
earn
my
it.
gosh.
It's a privilege. It's a shame that people don't.
Privilege.
Yeah, it's a privilege. There's nowhere I think, like, with exceptions like Iran, and you can still do tours, I think, through Iran. We can go anywhere. So that means you can discover anything. It's like we have an access to an internet that people don't have access to, you
Oh
know?
my gosh, I never thought of it that way. And so few
Yeah.
of us have passports. I think it's something like less than 30% of the population. It's the numbers are really low, have an actual passport. So where can people find you on social media, your websites? Where can people find more about your ventures and follow you on social media?
Okay, so we have saintandsinner.com. Definitely you can find our CBD products there. I am at Ashnomatic with a K, so it's ASHNOMADIK on Instagram. And I'll be posting a lot more. I'm like you, like I've been so low key, but I was traveling before Instagram, so it didn't seem like a necessary part of traveling for me. But now we're having to build this web presence. And then Nomadic Nation. So Nomadic with a K, NOMADIK, nation.com.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love this podcast. What you're doing is God's work.
Oh, thank you.
It's important work. It's important. Somebody needs to hear this.
Look, I mean, it's just like, man, like, I feel like, you know, I've met so many amazing Black women this past decade of just like living overseas, and you are certainly among them.
I want to encourage everyone who's listening to get out there, to explore the world. It's cheaper to live on the beach than it is in Atlanta. That's what they don't tell you.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
I got a testimony on this Good Sunday.
Amen.
My sister asked me for $1. And see, the Bible says it's better to give than to receive. So I gave that $1 and I didn't even ask questions. I didn't say you can borrow it. I didn't ask for it back. So she took that same $1 and went on down to the corner store. She got what is it? A gang silver, a pack of gauze with that $1. She came back, amen, and smoked that blunt with me.
Amen. Remember you in prayer. Anyone else have a word from the Lord, a testimony of God's goodness?
I've got a word from the Lord on today. I believe it was William Shakespeare who said, "To thine own self be true." Or more eloquently stated, be who you is. Because if you be who you ain't who you is. And my favorite Jamaican, Kimberly Megan, reminded me of that with her butt bow from her classroom banging Trina in the middle of her workday. There are going to be times when people don't get you, they don't like you, or otherwise hate your dirty draw. But the fact remains that you have to do what feeds your soul. And 7 out of 10 of the people might not like it, but so what? So what? Some folk like Tootsie Rolls, others like Godivas. You ain't supposed to be for everybody. You gonna be too much or too little for people sometimes. But don't betray yourself to appease the ubiquitous they. It's even gonna be people that you love and that love you and who are presumably well-intentioned that just don't get you. And that you might have to distance or eliminate from your life in order to reach your greater good. It's about knowing who you are. Like, really knowing who you are. Flaws, foibles, and all. It took some time, but like at 36, I know exactly who the fuck I am. As the great brother prophet Nip spake, I'm prolific, so gifted. I'm the type that's gonna go get it, no kidding. I'm a tray line baby from South Central LA that came on my mama's poom poom feet first. Trained to go. My daddy, who's both a G and a genius, raised me. I'm a high school dropout with a GED and a master's degree. I will bless you and curse you at the same damn time. I'm loyal to the soil. I'm a bruja. I'm a practicing root woman. New Orleans and Haiti pulses through my DNA. I'm a Pan-Africanist and a pansexual. And I fully intend on growing into a bad and beat octogenarian bitch talking cash shit and listening to my sugar-free. Hopefully not still smoking Virginia Slims. Today I invite you to also be who you is in all of your glory and your shortcomings. God bless.